Back home in our region, it sometimes seems as if the orange traffic cone or orange traffic barrel is some sort of state symbol. After all, PennDOT's been out in force all summer long working on the state's highways and bridges. The reality is that wouldn't have happened at all had it not been for a tough vote lawmakers took a couple of years ago during the Corbett administration. But engineering the same political result here in Washington is a completely different challenge. And that's why transportation tops the agenda of meetings the chamber has organized here in Washington.
What the issue is not that we have to do this, but how do we pay for it? And the area that I've been pushing on this is that we don't have to raise taxes. Actually, if we use America's resources, our oil and natural gas off our coast, the Atlantic Gulf, Pacific, and areas in Alaska, and even on federal lands, we generate from that, if we open those up for using our own resources instead of OPEC, we generate about $2.5 to $3.7 trillion over 20 years. And my bill would say you dedicate that towards America's infrastructure.
I look at it this way: oil is gotten down to $40 a barrel. If ever there was a time to either index the Highway Trust Fund or put maybe a barrel tax on oil, this is really the time to do it. This is an investment in the infrastructure of our country. If you have a hole in your roof, you just don't keep letting water come in just because you don't happen to have enough money in your right pocket. If you have to, you have to go find the money, you go borrow the money from the bank, you patch your roof. Our roads and bridges are literally crumbling. Our locks and dams are at dangerous levels. Most Americans get the idea that a user fee is the fairest way to fund the Highway Trust Fund. We just need to get enough Congress people to understand that that's a fair way to do it too, and to act.
The Greater Pittsburgh Chamber of Commerce led the charge on transportation funding in Pennsylvania a couple of years ago. The Chamber is a unit of the Allegheny Conference on Community Development. Dennis Yablonsky, the CEO, also here in Washington, D.C. Good to see you.
Nice to see you as well. Thanks.
This is an issue that just always seems to be a challenge.
Yeah, it is, and it's a very important issue. I mean, infrastructure is essential to the competitiveness of regions, of states, and of nations. And also on a positive side, it's a job generator. It puts a lot of people to work when you're building infrastructure. So we were successful in working in partnership with a lot of different organizations a couple of years ago at the state level to get a transportation funding bill passed, and now we're here in D.C. trying to do the same thing here.
Yeah, and a lot at stake for our region and whether or not the federal government actually moves forward on something like this.
Absolutely. I mean, the state funding is great, but even all the projects that that funding is now supporting require a certain level of federal funding as well. So you have to have both sources to really make the projects work. And our federal transportation funding bill has been extended on a series of short-term basis over the last year or so, and it's set to expire again at the end of this month. So Congress will need to act.
So some differences of opinion depending on which side of the aisle the lawmaker sits on about how exactly to pay for this. Does the chamber have a position in the conference?
We do not. We don't have a position on a specific funding mechanism. We've seen a number of different options that have been presented that we think would work. Our emphasis is on making sure they understand how important it is that this get done in a timely fashion, and they'll have to debate through the public policy questions of how to fund it.
They've had a penchant to just do temporary extensions as a way to solve this. Why isn't that really a solution?
Well, the problem with temporary extensions is that you can't plan. I mean, some of these projects take years, and having a 3 or 6 month or even a 1 year extension doesn't give the people that are actually executing these projects the surety that they need to be able to go forward and do the whole project. And so a long-term bill, 6-year bill, for example, is the kind of approach that we need.
The conference has really made this issue of transportation and world-class infrastructure a top agenda item.
Absolutely. I mean, our members have made it a top agenda item. The business community throughout the 10-county region told us last year when we went through our planning process that this was a very high priority for them, and that we, the conference staff, needed to work at the state and federal level to get it addressed. So businesses understand how important it is to be able to get your people and your goods moving. We are constantly trying to put our arguments in front of elected officials as to why this is important. I would say there's more sense of urgency right now because the current funding level is set to expire at the end of the month, and so there's not a lot of time left, and so we're here specifically now to try to make sure we support them and make sure they understand how important this is to the business community.
Dennis Yablonsky, CEO of the Allegheny Conference, the parent organization of the Greater Pittsburgh Chamber. Thanks so much.
Happy to talk with you.
It's important for business to be able to plan. I know they've been doing these patchwork bills, continuing resolutions one year to the next, but for business that wants to invest in a location and in a project, they can't have a year or two of knowing what's going to, they need to know it's 10 years down the road, 5 years down the road, so they can do long-term planning. That's why we come down and with the mayor and the business community to have these conversations, to communicate with our Senate delegation, with our House delegation, to let them know the benefits of a transportation bill or a workforce development bill or some of the other issues that we come here to work on.
You know, infrastructure is not just critical to move goods and people around here in the United States, it's essential to export goods abroad. And export's also on the agenda this fall here in Washington. More about that when our region's business returns to the nation's capital.